classroom. I would equate this similar to, I'm an Eagles fan, I'll admit it, but I will use MetLife Stadium. MetLife Stadium houses both the Giants and the Jets. That entire stadium is designed to be converted for two teams to use. Every poster on every wall in that facility is double-sided, and there's a crew of people that flip it around, and they get a week to do this, because you only play on Sundays in the NFL. Monday nights excluded and Thursday nights excluded. Okay? We have 5 minutes between classes. When I'm using my room every period of every day, I have 5 minutes to make that transition from AP Bio to Honors Biology. The fewer times I have to flip the room, the greater amount of sanity and stress I reduce, from my staff. So when I'm looking at what I have to section, this also plays into when courses are offered. It would be illogical to shove that Honors Bio somewhere up here and have them flip the room the extra time. That is another constraint that goes into this room usage. And I have my rooms slotted. 302 is a biology room. 505 is a chemistry room. 506 is a physics room. They are slotted like this to enable the flipping of the classroom, but that limits what I can use the rooms for and when I'm running those different sections. To further delve into that, if I tried to get creative and tried not to run the labs during those 2, 5, 8 highlighted periods, I lose the ability to run a class. Here you see that by not following the schema outlined on the previous slide, I've made that period 9 Honors Biology homeless. It no longer has a place to go because there's nowhere for its lab period to go. Obviously that is inefficient. But in looking at my many sections, there are 87 sections of science running this year. Of those, 10 of them are electives that do not have an extended lab period, which gives me 77 sections. I see Mr. Syed squinting because he's my human resources guy. Dr. Athanasiou also teaches some of the engineering courses, so she's a hybrid teacher. So it makes the math not fully work out as you would expect. I promise you I didn't shortchange you a teacher. As you look at what this does, though, for the 77 sections of science running this year that have an extended lab period, I have 25 of those periods occurring too, 19 and 28. That puts an immense amount of strain on the rest of the building when you look at where the sections for other classes start to fall. If I have to run labs period 2, that means it's difficult to run an ELA class 1 or 3 because their lab would conflict. Difficult but not impossible. It drives classes away from 2, 5, and 8 though. You can see the slight imbalance where I've got 12 sections versus 8 and 7, 13 sections. I do have an oddball in world language that somehow they got the lowest sections in period 7. That's just a scheduling conundrum, but you can see the overall imbalance across that. And it gets further exacerbated when you get into what we call the ripple effect. As I noted earlier, study hall and PE were tied to that lab period on that first slide, which means that study hall and study hall and PE are being driven to those 2, 5, 8 lab periods. This is counting what we call the number of seat requests that you need to fulfill student schedules. Because health is a 1-quarter system and then PE is 3 individual quarters, these numbers are very high because they represent quarters. You don't have perfect balance, so to divide this by 4 would be inaccurate because of option 2. Another constraint that adds some things to this that I'm going to leave aside.
Good job.
Thank you. So, as I look at across the year, across the 4 quarters of seat requests that I need, you can see the extreme imbalance occurring there. Periods 2, 5, and 8, because of the intensity that I'm running those labs 2, 5, and 8. That is one of the challenges with our current scheduling system. So if I move to the rotating drop and said we are no longer going to have extended lab periods, this is what a student's hypothetical schedule may look like. Mr. Krause had pointed it out earlier, but you can see this conveyor belt system where social studies moves up, where language moves up, math moves up, science drops on the B day, social studies on the C day. Then you have world language dropping on the D-Day, and then you cycle back around. You can see that schema working for the student with that unit lunch. And as Mr. Markarian already alluded to, as it stands right now, we cannot feed all of the kids on that system with our existing kitchen facilities. If I expand this, West Windsor is a common model I like to look at. I know there's a couple others, but I've communicated with their science supervisor extensively in the past. One of your site visits. A lab lunch is a common approach to that need for that extended amount of time. Some of our labs do not fit. When you're running a mock-up, like you're doing a titration or a dissection, or in physics, when they break out, they black the room out and they have fish tanks and lasers that they're studying light. It is very difficult to do that in the traditional 42-minute period. Gaining that period there happens when science rotates through and abuts to your lunch period. That does mean on those days that that student has a shortened lunch period. So if that is a 45-minute period, 20 minutes are eaten for the lab, the 25 remain for lunch on that one day of the week. Okay? That sounds rough. I formerly worked in Hillsborough as a teacher. They have 22-minute lunch periods for both students and staff. All day, every day, all 6 days of their cycle. Not ideal, but definitely something that other schools live with, and here you're talking about living with it one day on the cycle. It does, however, produce another list of constraints. When you are doing this, a teacher cannot teach this class where lab backs in and teach that class where lab backs in. They don't eat that day if you do that. So there are certain combinations where a staff member cannot be assigned the same periods to teach. I can't tell a teacher they have class both periods 3 and 5. Or 4 and 6, 1 and 7, 2 and 8. That is a constraint. Because it dictates when you can and can't offer things. Because science certificates are incredibly specialized. Unlike a math teacher who can teach calculus, geometry, algebra, everything in between, a biology teacher may only be able to teach biology. Or a chemistry teacher only chemistry. You have a few in the profession who are flexible like I am, where they can teach both chemistry and physics, or some who are dual certified and can teach biology and chemistry. But that's kind of like having a flex player in baseball that could do shortstop or second base. There's certainly one they're stronger at, and you definitely want to keep your teachers in their content of strength. The students hit the same issue. If you're a student looking to take 2 science courses, and we do have a cohort of those students, they get the same constraints impressed upon their schedule. They cannot take those same combinations or the child won't eat on a certain day of the cycle. That's just not something you can entertain, not feeding a kid 25% of the school year because they're trying to take 2 science courses. Changing gears now to look at the AB block model. This is looking at room 302. If I ran those same things without labs because you have an 88-minute period to work with and you're never time constrained, I just gained 2 additional classes that could run in that room. I haven't alleviated fully the need to flip the classroom. AP Bio at some point changes into Honors Bio on the same day, and I still have to change the room over. But I have gained some more time to work with. And if I gain time to work with, I can do one of 2 things. I can space my classes out better and build a full period between them to flip the room, or I can take some of my higher sections and slice them down to reduce class size. Or I can do both, depending upon how the numbers work out and what the requests are that year. When I compare the annual instruction times, and these are rough estimates based off of what that unit lunch looks like, and whether it be 4 or 5 minutes between transitions, this we know for certain. This is our current schedule, exactly what we do right now. These are estimates. If I look at courses that have no lab period, be that a science elective that has no extended lab period, or phys ed, or English, or anything else, right now that's how many minutes they will do annually given the 5-day-a-week schedule. This is how many minutes they will get when they are doing 3 consecutive days and then a drop day. You gain 270 minutes annually. If you do the AB modified block, they go up to 7,920 minutes when they are meeting every other day, or 50% of the school year. But because of the change in time, those transitions, you go up to a gained 360 minutes. On the other side, however, when you start to play with the lab periods, science takes a hit. Right now, with 5 days a week plus 1 lab period, you're looking at 9,072 minutes of instruction. You drop 342 minutes if you go with a lab lunch model. You lose even more than that if you take that 20-minute lab period that happens 25% of the time. Here, you drop way down by meeting every other day, no lab periods. And AP, where they do 2 lab periods on the 5-day cycle, sees the biggest hits. I had proposed, as some districts do with their AB, what you did if you had a study hall tied to it, as we do now, and we'll elaborate that on the next slide. You still lose 144 minutes. Across 180 days, that's fairly survivable. This would be a challenge for my staff. This would absolutely be a challenge for my staff, curricular instruction-wise. However, as we talk challenges, we are looking at the greater good. And Mr. Marcari and I have said this before. You have to look at what changes to make things better across the board for all the students. How much do we value that unit lunch? How much do we value that ability to offer things in a better system, help those logistics, help those struggles we're currently experiencing with our schedule? So I put this slide together to help, I hope, illustrate that. Currently, I can schedule 9 classes in a room. Any room at Ridge, outside of science, can hold 9 classes because we have a 9-period system where when some kids are in lunch period 5, they are using those rooms for instruction, as has already been elaborated. When I go to a rotating drop or a modified block, I drop down to 8. That is where we take the hit across most of the building. The only exception is in science, where I currently showed you the best I'm going to do is 6. However, even if I'm going to a lunch lab on the rotating drop, I still keep 8. Okay? The only change would be if AP has to have a study hall. That's going to constrain me a little bit, but that's something that would remain to be seen. Modified block, I keep 8. Maximum number of academic courses that a student will take in a year. 8 across the board. Right now you have 9, but you're losing 1 to lunch. Lunch isn't a class, and lunch isn't a class, so you're 8 across the board. No net change there. Maximum number of academic classes that a student taking 2 AP Science courses, which puts a lot of strain on your schedule, currently is 7. If we don't do the additional lab period, they go up to 8 in both of those models, or as I proposed, if you keep the study hall to save the minutes, they stay at 7. So there is no net loss there. Yet in both of those schedules, you alleviate a lot of the constraint we're currently experiencing. I know I just threw a lot at you, but it's now time for me to change gears and hand things over to Mr. Fackelman, who is our music director, among many other hats.
Good evening, everyone. All right, so my challenge was wanting to see how we can continue to maintain what we already offer in our music program across the board, band, orchestra, and choral programs. We're very proud of the music part in the district, and so the goal is to try to maintain what we have and not lose. So knowing where we come from is very important. So this is what our schedule will look like for the coming school year. As you can see, classes are built around a couple ensemble classes and then another music elective, a music theory course, a music history type course. So this is pretty much exactly what we look at. So knowing that this is what we have, how can we make it work, and what will it look like? So in my research, I sent a message out on my listserv across the state. Now, not everybody works in the summer, so I didn't hear from everybody, but these are schools that I heard from. It didn't matter to me what school districts, what their makeup was. It was more important to hear what they had to say about their schedule. We certainly aren't like Egg Harbor Township and Washington Township. We're very different. But at the end of the day, music is music in all different districts, and it's very important to see how things worked for them or didn't work for them. So that's our combination. And these were questions that I was looking at. I really wanted to know, what did they feel worked well? What didn't work well? Would you go, and it's the same questions Drew had asked in his visit, would you go back? How long did it take for your staff to embrace it? That's very important for me. I need the staff to buy in, like we all have to buy in, we all have to be committed to it. So knowing that the staff was going to be committed. I was so happy to hear that it didn't matter which schedule, A, B, or the rotating double block. They all worked fine. Transition was minimal. It's the who moved my cheese, we're upsetting the apple cart, we're changing things, so it's going to take a little bit of time for it to happen, but no district would change it. They had no desire to go to a different schedule. They certainly had no desire to go back to where they were. So they felt good in both types of schedules. So that's good. So one of the biggest challenges, and I think it's the biggest challenge we have, is maintaining our lessons for instrumental music and sectionals in our choral program. Understanding what our schedule has been built on is important. So music teachers, decades ago, it was decided that they're going to teach ensemble classes and another elective if possible, and then their schedule would be rounded out with lessons. So when we look at these schedules, how lessons can happen is very important in maintaining this. So how can we continue to offer lessons? What are some of our options? And again, options. So one option is to explore a rotating pull-out lesson schedule. It's something we already do in elementary schools. We do it at the middle school. We did it years ago at the high school, but it stopped for a number of reasons long before a lot of us got here. So it wasn't happening. Currently, our students have their music lesson during the lunch period, so they do not miss any class time. They eat for 20, and they do their music for 20, and hopefully they rinse their mouth out in between blowing into the instrument. You get really bad. Reality is what it is. So that's how we currently do our thing. So 20 minutes is what we're looking to maintain. We're not looking for 30, not looking for a 40 or more, 20 minutes. So could we set up a rotation schedule that would work for the students at the same time being understanding of the regular education teacher, general academic classes, that it's not going to interfere and interrupt what they're doing. We all have to play together in the sandbox, and so looking to see how we can insert lessons, we want to be cognizant that we're not interfering and causing a great disruption there. So some possibilities, we could utilize the lunch period, just as we're doing now. Lunch would work in a double drop in an A-B schedule, but that's a decision that has to be made. Do we want to have all the students have a full lunch period is something that we've all been talking about, or can we use that as a leverage period for lessons and ensembles and clubs, and so again, that's under consideration. We could utilize a zero period. Traditionally, zero periods happen before the school day starts. Could that work? It could. Sometimes it gets a little early. It may not work for everybody. We're only limited to that one period in which to squeeze all the students in, so that could be a challenge. Another option is a team teaching model. There's a potential to adding staff. So in our band program, the last 2 years, we have had a part-time teacher at the high school in the morning and then shift to middle school in the afternoon. The plan for the 1920 school year was for this teacher to become full-time at the high school. So we'll have two band directors in essence at the high school next school year. We currently have one orchestra director and we have one choral teacher, but in addition to the choral teacher, we have an accompanist that comes for a couple periods a day. So is it possible to make something work in the team teaching model? Yes, depending upon the schedule that's selected. Oh, next.
Okay, thanks. So, obviously, Mr. Miziak threw a lot at you. I appreciate the level of detail that was in there, but I think, it's important that you understand the complexity of what goes on and how the decisions that we make really reflect values. What do we value the most? Well, look at how you spend your time, right? Look at your own life. What do you value the most? Where are you investing your time and energy, right? And so when we look at our master schedule and we recognize how much science is impacting the entire program, I think it warrants real hard consideration when we're looking at making adjustments that are designed to make things better for everybody. So in any case, I just wanted to highlight a little bit about where we are with our timeline. The architect and engineers are starting. They are preparing drawings, working on creating documents that can be put out to bid. Obviously, there's no obligation from the Board of Education to actually put a shovel in the ground unless a contract is awarded to contractors, but to have that option available, we have to have drawings done, and when that happens, then you can ask contractors to bid. So during the fall, as I mentioned earlier, we want to continue to work on our schedules. We're going to work in Genesis, our software for student information and scheduling. We want to work more with parents, students, and staff, have more conversations, and do a deeper dive into some of these issues that we talked about tonight. We're looking at awarding a construction contract in the winter of 2020, December, January. Hopefully we'd have the contract awarded, and then construction would begin in the spring of 2020. As Mr. Kraus noted, staff development is obviously very important, including the staff, getting the buy-in of the staff, helping the staff understand what it would take to make the adjustment. Obviously, as Mr. Miziak noted, depending on how much change occurs, really impacts how much you need to work with the staff. The master schedule itself would be built January 2021 to August of 2021, with the addition being completed by the end of August in 2021 so that school could open in September of 2021 with a new master schedule. So that is the timeline that we have outlined in order to try to accomplish these goals. Questions before?
Could you just mention, I know some of the concerns that have come up in the past from the public of the impact on VOTEC and special ed classes with either of those two schedules?
Right. So with the VOTEC, students are either full-time or part-time. Obviously, if they're full-time students, then they're not coming to us at all. It's kind of a non-issue. The part-time is an AM-PM scenario. So what we have to make sure is that we can still accommodate an AM-PM schedule. And so we keep our morning classes running in the morning and our afternoon classes running in the afternoon, and we can still accommodate part day, as they refer to it, part-time VOTEC students. Yeah, so we could do that. Tom?
If I may jump in on the special ed concern, as Mr. Facklin and I know very painfully from working on the master schedule coming for Ridge, that current lab schedule has fallout for special ed as well. If you have a co-taught class, it now dictates those 2 periods that teacher is unavailable for. And if that teacher's driving for science, where a special ed student needs their ICS biology, that locks 2 periods where they can't receive the services for math, social studies, or English, and really has ripple effect across. So under the other 2 systems, whether we do lunch labs or not, or study hall for AP or not, that's irrelevant. You really gain a lot for special ed students and the ability to get more flexibility in their schedule under both the AB and the rotating drop. So there's a lot of benefit for those ICS sections, removing a lot of constraint there.
I was looking at the science number. You confused me, which is not really that. I was like, you had a lot of stuff going on. Do we have, when you were talking to other schools, do we have more science, like, are our science minutes like crazy? Oh my God, you have so many science minutes, or is it just like, are we the same as other schools that you were?
Well, that's a loaded question. The answer is in some we have more, in some we break even. Many of the schools that have changed, they do. So I'll pick on West Windsor because that was a site visit. And
They're about the same size, I think, about the same size.
they're not just same size. They're
They have less students.
They have about 400 less
Okay.
students.
and they have 2 high schools.
Yeah.
Well, we went
But
to-
they're also, I would put them in the same bracket as far as achievement in science, achievement athletically, achievement with their music program. They're very comparable. When they made changes, they did some interesting stuff where they went with no lab lunches for their 9th grade class, but lab lunches for some of their other classes. And then APs, some of them have the double period. So they did this kind of hybrid approach, and they very, I guess, systematically decided that, well, where we're losing minutes, we'll just do more of a summer assignment and figure it out that way with more homework during the school year. So now you get into the SEL concern of when you start to cut too much, you are still in those upper level courses gearing towards a test that is offered that first or second week in May. So at the end of the day, you still have a chunk of content dictated by the AP College Board that you're trying to hit an imposed finish line, and that time is going to be made up somewhere. So as we look at, where is the loss going to come in, obviously I'm advocating for my people, we want to try to minimize that loss, but there's something that's hard to quantify, and I know this side's going to laugh because I'm hitting another analogy, but imagine I want to paint this room, okay? The number of times that I have to take all the furniture out, tape it, tarp it, do a little bit of work and break it down, the fewer times I have to do that, the better. So when you're talking about fewer stops and restarts, there's something that's hard to quantify that is gained back. So a loss, in theory, on the AB or the AB or the rotating drop may not necessarily be the straight minute loss that it is because you were going straight through for a longer period of time. So it's hard to try to say that this number is not a real accurate representation, because if I had them for 88 minutes straight through as opposed to two 44-minute periods, I didn't stop and restart. So it's a really tough thing when you hear these other districts that have less on paper to tell you they get more done with the contact time. It's really a qualitative thing.
It runs the gamut. I mean, Montgomery does the 8 AP day. They don't do any extra time for labs, so.
100 and Central took what, a huge chunk of time out and saw zero change in their scores.
On the same topic,
I'll stand back up.
I'm not going to remember exactly, but I think Hillsborough's one. They offer the same exact AP Sciences as we do, but they're not 7 meetings a week, they're 6 or 5.
They do a 6-day cycle.
So, and others do 5, so you can earn 5 credits for the same AP Chemistry, say, that we offer at 7 credits. So how does that equate minutes-wise? And is it really necessary to have it be a 7-credit course meeting 7 times a week in a traditional schedule?
So I'm going to struggle to run the math on this, but so if you have an AP class in a system like Hillsborough, a 6-day cycle, it's getting 2 labs every 6 days. So it can still marry to PE because you'll have 4 meetings in 6 days, so you still hit the state minimum. That's, I think, the logic behind that. It is still a quote-unquote 7-credit class, and that drops PE to a lower credit class. It's hard to quantify, but I think you do allude to something that hadn't been mentioned on our presentation previously, is right now, and Mr. Kraus did say the word equity, a science class has more credits because it meets more times. AP meets 7 times, so it's a 7-credit class. The CP, the honors, they meet 6 times, so they're a 6-credit class, versus English is 5, social studies is 5. If you're pulling from PE, it actually drops to a 4-credit class. So you do put a little more weight on your sciences, so as you're talking in a world where people do get concerned with GPA and transcript, yes, an A in science means more because it has that higher credit value. If I look at the various other models that are out there, West Windsor, because they still have that double period for some of their APs, and for, like I said, biology didn't have it in 9th grade, but chemistry did, so that means that chemistry actually was worth more credits than biology on what they adopted. So you see so many different tessellations of this out there. I think it really comes back to, in getting beyond the minutes, what's important to us as far as how do we best address all these logistical challenges, and where are we willing to cut, and where are we saying, no, that's going too far. There's so many models out there that just to rest on that West Windsor one I think would be unfair. But there's a lot of considerations that we are looking at. Should I keep standing is the next question coming in?
I mean, I think it's interesting because I was on the committee the first time around when we went on site visits back, like, what, 4 or 5 years ago. And it was different high schools than the second go round. And so those schools are still doing the same schedules as they were back then. But I mean, that's what we heard at that time too, was like everybody liked it. There was, a couple of schools had done surveys before and after, and there was a lot of trepidation, I guess, among staff and students and parents before it happened, and then afterwards when they started them. You know what I mean? It was very positive. So I think, you know, we've heard a lot of good reasons for doing it. And I mean, all of the unknowns are kind of scary because we don't know exactly how it's all going to work out until we actually do it. I guess the science thing, like you've gone into a lot of detail about what we have to think about there, but I think there are a lot of different options. I mean, I like the fact that you laid them all out because it shows that there are different options that we can do. I think we've heard a lot about music from, you know, people in the community, and I've gotten phone calls and stuff. I think, you know, I've spoken with Michael about it a lot, and he, you know, at the schools that have it, you know, they have good music programs. I think the lessons is really the key. I think there's some, I don't want to, like, confusion out in the community that somehow these schedules are going to make people have to drop an elective. So that's something I just want to be sure, even though it's articulated here, there still seem to be people that think that because we're having 8 period instead of 9, we're cutting the class, like we did a long time ago when we talked about going to an 8-period day and everybody freaked out. So I hope that the community understands that that's not what these schedules are, that it's the same number of classes as what we currently have.
Got the next slide, I think that's
Sure.
actually outlined pretty clearly on there.
Yeah.
Right.
That
Yeah, I
third-
mean,
that third row.
we talked a lot about this issue too, in terms of, you know, right now, you know, in a way, with the current schedule, you're somewhat obligating a second period for science, depending on how your schedule falls. If you're tying your science lab to PE, then not so much, right? Because you can miss a day of PE, get your lab in. You're not obligating another class, but if you're doing something that is involving a study hall, and you might want to use that study hall for some other class, you can't, because we don't let you enroll in another class and only be there 4 days a week. The only time we let you do that is in PE. So for some students, there may be a scenario where, depending on how you schedule science, they might actually have the opportunity to schedule something else in lieu of that period that they were using to accommodate their labs for their sciences. That just depends on how this goes. Now, obviously, that could have an impact on how many students are taking more classes, right? You could have a contingent of students that, oh, if I don't have to take study hall and you're going to let me take another class, is that going to actually increase the number of requests for course on an annual basis? And it could, which could impact staffing. You know, and would you get to a point where you say, well, sorry, for some students we're able to accommodate you, but we ran out of seats and we don't have any more teachers, so we have to limit that. And that could be an outcome depending on how this plays out.
And that,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that goes to the issue of equity, because we've had
Right.
a lot of discussions on the board about how, with the funky schedule that we have now, with like people kind of getting scheduled for creative ways to work around these things, that it's not, that certain kids are getting more, you know,
Right.
hand-picked schedules and stuff than others. And so
Right, and we talked about that, phasing that out, starting with this year's freshmen.
If I could add on to Ron, when you mentioned the music lessons. In my conversation, I'm very close with my counterpart in Montgomery. We talk about this all the time. They're a district that they do not have music lessons. They're trying to find a way to get them back in officially. They kind of break the rules. Everybody's supposed to not do anything during lunch, and so people turn a blind eye and they let them do their lessons during lunch. Watchung Hills, I've been talking with them for the last couple years, and some of their central office staff I met. They're another district who never had music lessons. They're trying to get those in. So the districts that had them want them back because they don't have enough, these never have. So it's an important part that everybody's struggling with, you know, that are in the schedule, that want to have some music.
I just think that this was such a great presentation, and there's so much misinformation that has been posted,
Right.
written, and I know this is going to be somewhere on the website, but unless there's incentive for people to go and look, it might be great in your next SOS if you could include something that says, we just had our Board of Ed meeting, a very thorough, and attach it, because that might, you might get a handful of people to click and open it.
I'll be happy to give that a
And maybe that
shot,
will
no
dispel
problem.
some of the misinformation, because a lot of things, such as, music is gonna be decimated. There
Right.
won't be any more art. It's very clear.
Well, I mean, like I said, you actually, in theory, in some scenarios, create more opportunity for kids to take an elective, depending on what the student is currently doing under the existing model, and how they're working their PE, study hall, lab.
And it's funny you brought up art. We didn't talk about art tonight, but one of the things that everybody wants in the arts is time. More time. So the art people be like, what? Sit there and just keep painting for
88 minutes, 58 minutes. To piggyback off of, you know, just because that opportunity is there to take another class, I'm sure there are kids who every time, you know, they shove something else in there, but the other kids are like, oh great, now the study hall I want clearly fits. And now they've built in time into their schedule to help them manage their schedules. Honestly, right now, I don't think we could really accommodate every kid who requested study hall because we don't have the rooms. That's you know, another issue there, because you have the cafeteria in use 5 periods a day. Versus if you change things up and we had that space, you could actually better accommodate some of those study hall requests in addition to some of those course requests. So again, we're juggling all these many things that are important to us, and where that needle falls is a yet to be determined. But as Nick kind of alluded to, it's pointing very clearly to, we need more classrooms to make any type of change for the better.
So one last comment that I have, because it's been out there as well, and I'm not sure I totally buy into this, but if you look at the rankings of the high schools, and we've, you know, talked about who our competitors are, who the, you know, who our benchmarks are, where do most of this, have we looked at where the schools who are above or below us or whatever, and their schedules, what kinds of schedules, what's the trend? I mean, I have some ideas, but, and I know Milburn, who's on a traditional 1-9 schedule, is about to switch. So, I don't know that they've determined it completely, but they're in the same process. They're one of the top schools in the district. Yeah.
I think the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
That we're looking at all those schedules, we're looking West Windsor, Cherry Hill, Milburn, Livingston,
Chatham's
Chatham.
already on the, yeah, they're already on the.
Chatham, 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's one of the ones we pushed, there you
We
go.
went to see, sure.
I also, I mean, I know adding lunch is an issue. No matter, like, no matter what we do, lunch is an issue. And it has been an issue for a long time. They added it onto the school. There's almost 2,000 kids. We have a lunch, a cafeteria that sits what? 400. It's just not, I mean, no matter what you do, we had to do something about lunch. And that means you need bigger space. I mean, and I'm glad that we can, well, you know, I think that the new schedule will be great, but, you know, if you're gonna talk about, it had to be addressed at some point, because, you know, having lunch at 5 lunches starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, someone's always losing out, I feel like.
And if I can just piggyback on that and say 2 things about lunch. Anyone who's got a teenage boy knows that 10 o'clock is a very difficult time for them to eat lunch and survive until 2:30. And the kids who get the 8th period lunch, and there's no food left in the cafeteria, or Aramark has had to shut down because they've sold all of the good selections for the day, that same kid's pretty miserable as well. And it's not an even distribution over those lunch periods because of a variety of factors. So it creates that equity that Robin was talking about on another point.
Do any of the schools, to the extent that they allow kids to have like a lab lunch or lessons during lunch, do any of them limit the number of days that they can do that? Or can they go lab lunch 5 days a week or?
It will only be once a week.
Oh, once a week?
Well,
What's a rotation?
well, a worst case scenario would be twice a rotation.
Because the rotation falls
And never
twice.
on the same day. So you have a 4-day system, and so maybe on both A day and B day, the child has a shortened lunch to take the 2 classes they need.
And if they had lessons too. I mean,
Right, that's what-
theoretically,
yeah.
they have-
So now if you factor in, they do some unique things when it gets to the lessons. But there are some safeguards put in place to make sure that, like, we can show on all those systems that the child is scheduled and has lunch for a minimum of 25 minutes every single day of the week. with at least 50% of those days being the full unit lunch.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, when tires meet asphalt, the reality of it is like, I mean, a kid could be done their lunch in 10 minutes and then they have 35 minutes of study hall. You know, it's hard to try to quantify what's gonna happen. You might have kids, I mean, my middle guy's the slowest eater on the planet and probably needs that full 45, 50 minutes, but.
Yeah.
20 minutes, so.
This makes, also, scheduling is easier. Like,
Immensely.
I'm just talking about time, we're talking about like people who we pay to schedule, and right now, it's a burden, I'm assuming, from what I've heard, that our schedule.
So I can do the science schedule and then they have to manually enter it in.
I mean, I'm just saying like the new, so the schedule like this, we went to like a road change or maybe, big schedule and a lot easier.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, you don't
So
have
that
to
you're not
ask for it
spending,
anymore.
so you can spend time doing something else,
Right.
you know?
I really enjoy it, I might just sit now.
You know, I'm just saying, it just, it seems to, we have other time for other, you know, important things that we need.
I'm sorry. Does anyone else have questions? Okay, well, we're gonna do public comment in a second. So I think at this point, we are done with the presentations. We're up to superintendent's report. There's 2 items, so someone like to make a motion. And then Jen White and Linda. So I guess it's not sitting down yet. But the first item is that Ridge High School graduated 462 students this year, including a couple of hours. That Ridge High School graduated 462 students this year. That's the first item. And then the second one is just the receipt of the HMP report. So, do you have any comments? Okay. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray? Mr. Sad?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Warren?
Yes.
Mrs. Wolf?
Yes.
Mrs. McKeon?
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. Okay, now we're up to public comment on agenda items. So if anyone has comments or questions on any of the presentations or agenda items, now is the time.
Stacey Arbine, Water Road. I have just all questions. Okay, one of mine is, have we considered that the average attention span, especially in a teenager, is 45 minutes? And the reason I know that is because I work with lifeguards, and lifeguards have to get a break every 45 minutes, or else they lose their focus and attention. It is also the same with air traffic controllers. They're supposed to get a break every 45 minutes. That's like the body's natural rhythm. So I'm worried that although we're gaining time from not transitioning and breaking down the room, we might be losing time because the kids might be losing focus and they're gonna be squirmy and want to get up and take a break anyway. So that's one of my questions. 2 is, students with ADHD and other executive functioning issues, how will they remember which day they are in, which schedule they are, and how are they not gonna be feeling lost all the time? I'm worried about that. Okay. The lunch, if there are, let's just be real here for a minute. If everybody's eating lunch at the same time, what happens to the bathroom? Because I know a lot of kids, like, they go to the bathroom during lunch. Do we have enough bathroom capacity to handle that many kids going to the bathroom at the same time? Okay, my kid's always getting in trouble because he's asking me to go to the bathroom during class, so we're like, go during lunch, but how can the whole school go to the bathroom at the same time? Just want to know. Okay. And then, yeah. And then my last question, and I'm not sure the facts exactly, but one thing that did strike me was Washington Township was one of the things that we had up there as like a rotating job schedule. But I also know that Washington Township is struggling. They've had an increase in student suicides lately, and I'm just wondering if that has, if we've studied that, if when they changed our schedule, if that affected what's going on in that community right now. Okay, so those are my questions. Thank you.
It wasn't my slide.
Is there anyone else?
My son has to say, I have a similar kid who needs the movement, so that not trying to move is not good for him. So.
I just have some very simple questions.
Can you tell us your name and address?
Yes.
Oh, yes, This is my first time to really come to the meeting and related to this.
And just be calm, it's, just, but if you could state your name and I know you
yeah.
signed it already, but just state
Yeah,
your
my
name.
name is Pam, I live at 14 Groveville. I can see all the challenges. While that I was listening, I have some concerns. With the A-day and B-day model, I'm a little concerned about like 80 minutes per period talking. I don't know, I think high schooler, do you really trust them that they can focus and stay there for 80 minutes of teaching? Of course, there may be some teachers like, it's just do the lecture for 20 minutes and they have the rest of time for them to just do the writings. For science, I think it's fine because they will be doing the labs or doing, I think that part I have no worries. But for writing, for other subjects, I think 80 minutes kind of probably, because I can see the goal is trying to get, to gain sometimes, or to doing some, whatever the positive facts, try to do something good to our kids. But meanwhile, that maybe practically the kids instead of like gain more lecture time from teachers, seriously, instead of that, they may just even do nothing because they couldn't focus anymore. 80 minutes. 80 minutes. I mean, how many college students can focus for 80 minutes per period? That's just, I mean, to me, I think that's a little too much. Another thing I have heard about the elementary school, the 4th grade and 5th grade. I appreciate the structure, the efforts on that. But honestly, if I'm not trying to offend anybody, to me is that I think our kids with that this type of implementation, instead of they have the shock when they transfer from 5th grade to 6th grade, they call it some kind of like shock because of the change of the classroom, because of everything. Instead of having them be shocked once, now I think they have been shocked for twice, because they will be, no matter what. I think the kids will transfer from elementary school to middle school, no matter what happened, because they have the much bigger, there are many more students there. They have completely different teachers. They have new lessons. So, and I have a middle schooler. She's doing perfectly fine. She didn't even go through whatever. I think our school district offered like during the summertime, during the kind of like training before transition. I mean, that program, I think that program is sufficient enough to help whoever needs help to get used to the middle school. But implement that whatever, we're doing a fourth grade or 5th grade. I mean, obviously maybe there are some positive, impact on kids. But to me, I feel like probably negative parts is more overcome than the positive part. I just feel like I have a 3rd grade. She's getting to 4th grade. I think that she's gonna be shocked over there, and then when she goes to middle school, she's gonna, no matter what, she's gonna shock again. It's just different. It's different school. It's different environment. It's different class. There are different teachers. No matter what, they have to face the new thing, and they have to get used to it. If they feel nervous, they just go to the summer program. It's sufficient. Why do we have to spend so much time and efforts to change that, implement that, whatever going on? I have a neighbor who used to be a teacher in China. I think China will offer, they are doing something like 5th grade rotating classroom things. I asked her in person, I said that, how would you compare that, your experience in China by doing that and, basket age, by that time I asked her, she was actually already teaching in basket age. And so she does have, experience for both
Excuse me,
kinds
ma'am,
of.
I'm sorry to interrupt, I just wanted to let you know I paused it, but you have about 1 minute to go.
should I stop now?
No, no, no.
They got a
You
minute,
keep-
they
keep
come here
going.
for 5 minutes.
Oh,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah, okay, and I know I interrupted your train of thought, so just take a
Okay.
minute, I won't start it
Yeah,
again,
so
please.
by asking my neighbor, because she has experience with both school district, I mean, she basically told me she feels like fourth grade, fifth grade, in her experience, that it's not really ready for the program to get in rotating. She feels like the previous program is perfect, fine, when they get to the sixth grade and started rotating. And I feel like it's fine for my girls to be shocked once. I don't like them to be shocked 2 times. That's just my opinion. So, but thank you everybody for your hard working. I can see all the challenges. Thank you.
Annika Forza, 45 Dawn Drive. Just contrary to that, I just wanted to say that platooning, I actually have asked some kids in our neighborhood, and I've heard actually very positive things about it, and I think, I personally think it's kind of a friendly, easy way to ease the kids into the middle school, so I actually think that's a positive thing. Super excited about the Spanish, yay, I wanted that for many years, so thank you for, I know you've been working on that for many years, so thank you for that. And then as far as the drop schedule, I just wanted to say about the lessons in particular, and I know you're still considering options, I think the option of the pull out of classes is one I would definitely try to stay away from. I think that's been a very difficult thing for a lot of people taking the lessons in the middle school. And so I wouldn't want to see that. I kind of feel like, okay, that's 3 years, you got to get through the middle school and do that, but then in the high school, you don't have to have that pulled out of classes anymore. So I would really, really emphasize that. I don't think that's a good solution. But I would really like to continue lessons, so I hope we can find another solution. And then just to the comment about the time frame and the sort of 80 minutes, because that's something, I appreciate all the benefits, and I can see a lot of the benefits of this program, but it's something that I keep thinking about because I read a lot of articles about, just sort of physical, mental health, and it just seems like more and more what I'm reading is sitting is the new smoking, and really every 30 minutes to every 40 minutes you should be getting up and moving around. Not just kids, but adults. It's really important. I'm saying that as we're sitting here for 2.5 hours. But that's just something I think about is like as much as I understand and appreciate the benefits of maybe gaining back all those minutes, I also kind of love the idea that kids are actually getting up and moving around every 42 minutes, even if it's just walking to another class. I just think physically and mentally that's important. So maybe there's a way to encompass that still in one of those, but I just, I don't have the answer, but that's something that I keep thinking about whenever I hear about these longer situations. And I have 4 kids, and I can say at least one of them would have no problem sitting through an 80-minute class. He's super laser focused. But I have another kid that I have a really hard time envisioning sitting in an 80-minute class or even a 57-minute class. So that concerns me a little bit. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Barbara Greery, Dryden Road. I'm excited about the Spanish. My question is, in those days that you're splitting it with the media, so it's 30-minute period, you're splitting it, they're walking to the classroom, they have to get resettled in, and you're talking about 4th and 5th graders, in a class that might have some children that don't settle down as quick, you're probably...
Just direct your comments to the board.
Okay, sorry.
And then the board or maybe the administration
Okay,
may answer.
She'll hear you
afterwards.
even if you look
We
this way.
understand what you're asking, and I
so
close
my
the clock. so
point
everybody-
is that you're probably at most looking at like an 8 to 10 minute period of Spanish, and I don't really know what that really accomplishes.
Is there anyone else for public comment or questions?
Jane Conklin, 110 Spencer Road. I just wanted to sort of reiterate the same ideas as some of the other parents were saying. My concern is for some of the kids with special needs. We have a lot of amazing programs on very, very different levels for all of those kids. Some kids are going out into the community doing jobs that if we're changing our schedule on a daily basis might make that difficult. We have some kids who are in inclusion, and for those kids, they may have the opportunity to be in inclusion maybe one class out of all of them, because they're able to, understand the information at that level, and then you're putting them in a class where it just may be too long for them to be able to be in that type of a class. We have our kids with ADHD. Those are the kids that, if they're in a class, then I know the teachers are going to be trained, and hopefully they're not just doing lectures for the 90 minutes or the, but even so, the movement piece of it and the diversity of going from one place to the other and the smaller chunks are better for those kids. So I also have concerns with the music, which is a whole other issue as well. Again, with the lessons that did work to some extent in the elementary school, it got harder in the middle school. A lot of kids drop out because they have to do it during class time, and it really stresses them out. And I know we talk a lot about SEL in our district, and what this is doing is adding more instructional time, which we're looking to do, but taking away some of the other opportunities for movement and even socializing in the hall as you're going from one place to the other. There's certain things that are helpful for a lot of our kids that I think we may be missing if we're having these very long periods. And so those are my concerns.
Is there anyone else?
I wasn't gonna say anything because they've all said what I was gonna say, but I'll say it anyway. Elaine Daddario, 46 Dykeman Street. I think it's a great thing that you're trying to do for a community. I see the hard work, I see the benefits, and that you're doing it because you want to help the kids. What most of these people are saying is what I'm going to say too. I think you're going ahead with it anyway, but I hope you will consider the kids that need the break. I mean, even with the classes we have now, there are kids that go to the bathroom to get that break because they need it with the timing we have now. So I get that, transitions, it cuts down on that, but some kids really need that. And I'm, up for option 2 and all this because kids need breaks, they need movement, gym is important. If we're cutting that out and they're sitting for the 80 minutes, I know this is being said, but it's really important. Because I don't think it's like, the ADD kids, which I happen to have one, but I think every kid needs a break, movement, and it's proven that it settles you neurologically. So I don't know if there's a way in constructing all this, because it's still being formed, that you can consider that and maybe have something as part of the long classes be. After 40 minutes, we do a little stretch thing or whatever. I think there's creative ways, and I'm sure some of these other schools deal with that too. So I'm not asking, that this doesn't happen. I have a feeling it will happen. It's for the benefit of all, and I know that's what you're here to try to do. But in, reiterating what everybody's saying is there's a lot of, this stuff that if we're going to work it out for everybody, that maybe you can consider, that movement is important. Breaks are important. Socializing maybe for a minute in between. I know we want more instructional time, but to keep them healthy with the SEL part of it, maybe we can interweave something that covers every kid. Because it could sound like it's all instructional, so it's for the academic kid. Always, hopefully, and I think you do, consider the non-academic kid or the not high achiever, or I know you do, but consider all the kids and maybe leave some of this stuff in. Thank you. Oh. I should-
Okay, so I guess at this point we'll close public comment.
Sure. Obviously, I definitely hear the concern about the amount of time. And I think, one of the things that we can work on, I think would be helpful is maybe a Q&A to kind of go along with some of these issues that come up, whether it's just something that somebody says, I heard this is out there, could you put something in the Q&A to kind of address it? Or more immediately, the questions about, well, how would you manage 60 minutes or 80 minutes or 85 minutes? And, what does that look like for the students in the classroom? I can tell you from a little bit of personal experience, and I think Kristen taught in the same model. We taught at Hunter Central High School where they had, they had the full blocks. I think there were 84 minutes, I want to say 84 or 88, depending on whether it was during the lunch period. they actually carved up the time I was teaching, they actually carved up the 84 minutes during block 3 into 3 different lunches. So I would teach for, 30 minutes, the kids would go to lunch for 30 minutes, and then they come back for 50 minutes or whatever. It was kind of, we had 3 at the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, you don't lecture at the kids for 42 minutes, much less lecture at them for 85 minutes or 60 minutes, however you carve up the period. You do activities, you get them out of the seat, you have the opportunity to do a variety of different things. You do group work for a little bit of time. You do a lesson for 15 minutes. You give them time to practice something. Like Mr. Krause, I was a math teacher. So you definitely need to be aware of that time issue, and you need to be sensitive to all the different students in your classroom, and make sure you're meeting their needs, and going outside. I mean, taking opportunities to do different things with the students, I think is really important. And one of the nice things about having the larger blocks of time is it does give you the opportunity to do different types of things that you might not have been able to do in a shorter period of time. But I agree 100% that it is an issue that needs attention, and certainly with some of these specific questions, I know I've talked to Jean about talking to some of the directors and some of these other schools on this list, kind of putting together a Q&A. Certain programs are more self-contained programs. How does that work? Work-study programs, how is that going to work? Can we still do the same kinds of things for all the different programs that we're doing? So we can work on that. I think probably the best way to kind of kick those off would be a Q&A where we can get a little bit more detailed in some of these, and I'd be happy to work with the team on putting that together. With respect to the question about the Spanish, I think that was kind of alluded to a little bit, that splitting of the time, and are we going to be able to make that work? I think Tom said it the best. We need to try, see how we can get it to work. It's really complicated. I mean, I honestly, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I listen to these conversations, and with all these things that, I mean, my eyes are going like this. I'm like, what? You do it how? So the elementary school, you really have to have a lot of respect for all the different things that they're trying to juggle. They have their own set of complexities. I mean, you saw some real detail about the complexities of just high school science, right? And, as a parent, I mean, I graduated 2 kids from high school, so I know, I've been through it, right? You just get the kids' schedule, and you're like, cool, they got their schedule, looks good, yay. You have no idea what goes into making everything work. I mean, you start to get behind all the layers of the onion, you realize it's complicated. And whether it's elementary school, high school, middle school, all the different things that everybody's trying to accomplish, it is very challenging. So I do appreciate that, we're really trying to get Spanish back. It's something that the board has kind of been talking about for years. We lost having certified world language teachers at the elementary school, and we lost G&T years and years ago, and enrichment activities, and trying to bring all these things back into the schools has been a goal for a long time. So we're really excited to be trying to get Spanish back in there, and we're going to, I'm sure, be revisiting this, and how's the timing working, and is it valuable for the kids, and can we get the most out of it? When you mix that in with the platooning, which by the way is just for 5th grade, not for 4th, it's strictly for 5th, it's a challenge. We're doing a lot of new things at the same time, which is super exciting, but it does require that you're constantly revisiting and talking to people about how it's going. And with respect to the platooning, I can tell you that I've sat in meetings with the kids and asked 5th grade students, tell us how this is going. Do you feel like it's a good thing? Do you feel like it helps you for the middle school, getting used to moving around? And predominantly the answers have been very positive about the experience for kids in the platooning in the 5th grade. So the bathrooms at lunch, that's certainly an interesting question. I think we might have to talk to how it's going in some of the other schools. How many students do you have? How many bathrooms do you have? And do you find issues at lunch? I think that's a good question to look into. And then I made a note about Washington Township School. I think that was on a slide that Michael talked, not because they were necessarily A, B, well, and there are multiple Washington Townships too.
This was Washington Township in Gloucester.
Which is a large, or fairly large distance.
Yeah, so I'm not sure it's the same Washington Township, but jump in,
So
sure.
certainly all these points are really good and would require, we've said it, but a lot of PD, right? So the teachers would, I think at Hunter Central, we spent 1 or 2 full
Yeah,
school
we
years
spent at least a year.
with trainings and learning how to break up the block, whether it's 60 minutes or 80 minutes into 2 or 3 segments, and how to transition and look at your curriculum a different way. So it would require curriculum work and it would require extensive PD, more depending on which model we choose, right? 80 minutes is a bigger shift than 60 minutes, but it also allows you to do things in a more inquiry-based model, some things we're trying to do in 40 minutes where we run out of time. And we're just trying to finish and give them their homework and get them out the door. So that's the value, is extending the time and do more meaningful activities, but you have to have it broken up for kids, and we did a lot of training and would do it.
And I think, as we put together a Q&A, maybe we could, Sean and I were kind of looking at some notes about maybe a sample lesson plan.
Sure.
People could see how lessons might look in a longer period of time. And, absolutely with respect to the overall well-being of students and how we're using time, I just want to emphasize that for all the kids, regardless of their needs, that really is the goal. And I appreciate that you recognize that that's really what we're trying to do. And they're how you use that time, the pros and cons, and managing the stress and managing the stress of a workload. In some ways, some of these adjustments might make more study hall time available for students. It might help them in that light. So, we're really trying to look at everything to create the all-round greatest mousetrap we can in taking the opportunity to do this. So I appreciate a lot of the comments of the public. I appreciate your coming and your supportiveness and your willingness to be just so honest and thoughtful in your comments. We're gonna work hard to do the best we can.
Lee, if I can get real quick,
Yeah.
the comments about concern about the long period of time in lecturing. It's related but not related, so just follow me for a second. If you were to ever watch a kindergarten or first grade music class, a general music class that runs for 15 minutes. 15 minutes is a lot at that age level. The teachers are masterful because they vary the activities constantly. They're working in stations, they're moving to a different part of the room, they're getting into a different activity. Think of that kind of a model in the larger block setting where you're going to vary your activities, and it wouldn't be all about training, and that's something that we've all been talking all along. So it's good to watch those classes. It's like herding cats, and you can get through it. 15 minutes is a long time.
Some of the elementary classes are closer to 60 plus minutes as well. So we have K through 5 classes that are going above 60 minutes,
And I can
by
say-
varying the time.
I can say too, from teaching in a model that's really long and really short, having done both, in my experience, after you got used to it, both periods of time went by very quickly. When you taught
That was the
in
flip side,
40
is
minutes,
teachers
it's
are
like-
not working for that long, the same. So the flip side is, are the teachers finding it that they can have stamina also?
Well, one of the things that we haven't talked about a lot, because, not for nothing, we all put the kids first, right? We put the kids first and the teachers come second. But
They have to have this- they have to
there's
be
a lot of
careful, too.
opportunities to actually increase the amount of time for the teachers. And one of the things that we think will benefit the students is creating the time for the teachers to work together a little bit more, especially when they're teaching the same courses, right? And trying to create consistency and share activities and work together on assessments and be reflective about the professional growth of themselves as a unit, and also how that relates to the performance of the students and how things are going for them, to have a little bit more time to be reflective about that in different ways. Really what PLCs are supposed to be about, and here we are, we're our own worst enemies in trying to do that in a schedule that doesn't facilitate it. So why are we doing that to ourselves when, we make the schedule, right? If we make the schedule, can we make a better schedule that, will help the students and help the teachers also? And, not for nothing, every minute that a teacher is spending on cafeteria duty or hall duty, it's like, you're paying these college-educated people to keep an eye on the halls or the cafeterias, and, if you can convert more of that to professional time, whether it be planning, grading, working with kids, teaching, whatever the case might be, I think you're getting a better return on your investment for paying those teachers too. So I think there's a lot of, in as much as we're gonna run into unanticipated challenges, I think there's also a lot of unanticipated benefits that are gonna come in as well.
Instead of having that in the.
I'm sorry. We're past the public comment section.
We'll open it up again if you have questions.
Yeah,
There'll be another one.
there's another public comment coming up. I just wanted to say, like,
Can I just say one thing real quick? It's just sort of an informal thing because of the way we're all sitting around, but we'll give you another chance.
No, I was just gonna say, like I teach in 2 different length periods, and when you have the short period, like you sometimes feel like you're afraid to try to cram something else in. So like when I was observing on site visits at school, a longer block, it did have a calmer feel, but part of it was because the teachers felt like, you know what, if I want to do a mindfulness activity, or I want to take a break and do something in the class, or let the kids talk for a couple minutes, there's still going to be time to finish whatever the actual activity is in the class. And I think as the kids get older, the activities are more complex. They're not like like high school activities in class, you don't do it in 5 minutes. So it's hard to, a lot of them take up the whole 42 minutes, and then you don't have time to do anything else that day. So there's no opportunities that break it up. So I think it actually affords a lot of opportunity for the teachers to try a lot of this cool stuff that people are doing, you know what I mean? That they feel like they don't have time in a 42-minute period a lot of the time to even fit it in. So, does any other board member?
I just want to say, I know there was mention about FAQ kind of thing. Can we just make sure VOTEC is one of the things that's addressed in that? Okay, thank you.
It's come up a lot in the community, even though it's just not that many kids that go there, but it's still working. Okay, so we're now up to approval of minutes. There's one item that someone like to make a motion, then Corin and Tim. Any comments or questions on the minutes?
So is there going to be no more left than
Spanish instead of
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Mrs. Schaefer? Mrs. Bray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon? Yes. Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Corn?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yeah. Yeah.
Madam Clerk?
We're up to the finance committee. There's 81 items. Someone like to make a motion? There's an addendum with the last couple on it. Yeah. Mrs. Woldridge and Mrs. Warren.
You want me to do the report? The minutes only went out this morning. So.
Okay, so why don't we just do the items? And we can do the
Okay. So item 1 is disbursements. Two is the investment reports. 3 is standing transfers. 4 is professional development expenses. 5 and 6 are disposal of books and home books. 7 is the acceptance of the donation of $75,000 for construction of a crosswalk from Mount Cross Boosters at Ridge High School, so thank them for that. 8 is a donation of $6,600 from the Ridge PTO for painting the Ridge cafeteria. Thank you to the Ridge PTO. 9 is student services, 10 is approval of payroll services contract. 11 is a modified resolution for the paper project to identify an alternate location. That's going to be done potentially by the Ridge Sports Foundation. 12 is appointment of a civil engineer for the Ridge High School position we discussed tonight. 13 is withdrawal from the capital reserve to pay for the civil engineer and architect for the Ridge addition. 14 through 27 are appointment of student services. 28 to 29 are the out-of-district placements. 30 through 71 are continuations of current out-of-district placements. 72 through 76 are approval of new student services. 77 is approval of settlement. 78 and 79 are student services, same services but with a new provider. 80 is approval of settlement, and 81 is approval of 3 mandates related to healthcare that came down, that were passed by New Jersey State, related to additional items that insurers cover. So as a self-insured district, we are approving the recommendation of Arthur Gallagher that we cover these items in our insurance coverage.
Just one comment. Item number 2 can actually be struck from the agenda because the financial reports were not produced. They were supposed to be thrown into us. We discussed that apologize for that. So it's really items one, and then 3 would really be 1, which would become 3 through 8.
Well, we start with 3, so we'll be 3 to 8.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Does anyone have any
total,
questions?
they'll be renumbered when you finally get them.
Any questions about the items? Okay, can I have a roll call? Yeah.
We did it when the Wolverine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. I
Yeah.
just come.
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray? Mr. Sassen?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McKee?
Yes, except for abstain on 8. I'll get to the right page, it's like how many pages there. Personnel. Okay, so now we're up to personnel, there's 32 items, so we're gonna make a motion. Mrs. Horn and Mr. Salmon. I don't have a, we haven't had a personnel committee meeting since the last one, so I don't have a report. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the items? There are a lot of items, because we're appointing all of the staff with the new contract, which we didn't do until now because we had stipends, so there's a lot. We have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn? Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Mrs. McKee?
Yes.
Madam President?
We're up to policy, there's 2 items, and somebody can make a motion. Mr. Salmon and Mrs. Gray.
Policy? We have these are all first reading last time.
Right, so second reading.
Second reading, there's no changes. Don't have to read through them or good. Read through- Yes, I read through them all last.
Yeah.
So they're all same. And then and then the calendar, which was also put.
Yeah.
That wasn't changed either.
No, that wasn't changed either. The only thing we did on the calendar, which we do every summer, is designate which of the 4 days are the,
Right.
the early dismissals for in-service. So that was the only change. So, which we haven't even approved in the past, but I just included it because we had the chance to. So it's not actually changing the calendar, it's just designating which days are the in-service days. Oh, you did, which they are, well, I was gonna say, yeah, if you want to, I'm gonna send out the calendar to everybody.
Well, Wednesday the 2nd of October,
Right.
Wednesday the 6th of November, and Thursday, Wednesday the 29th of January, and Wednesday the 4th of March.
Sounds right. We basically followed the same pattern as we have the last couple of years.
All second readings, we did them all the first time.
Does anyone have any questions before we vote? Do you have a roll call, please?
Mr. Byrne?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mr. Salmon?
Yes.
Mrs. White?
Yes.
Mrs. Korn?
Yes.
Mrs. Wooldridge?
Yes.
Yes.
Madam President?
Thank you. Okay, we're up to curriculum.
The curriculum committee has not met, but we do have one item
Oh, yeah, we need a motion
for approval. Move to approve these course title changes.
Okay, Linda seconded. Anyone have any questions?
Are we doing that because other schools have done it? Why are we changing the titles?
It was the
It's the ones, it's fundamental biology to become CP, it's for clarity, Mike, it's for, I think, just for fundamental.
Well, yes.
It's related,
It's a resource for
Yeah, I
they're all
think-
their special education.
yeah, so it's
Oh, I'm sorry,
related,
right, these are
remember
all-
Karen, it's
yeah.
related to how we needed to
Designate special ed.
designate special ed in a different way so that the
Yes.
kids aren't
And this
identified
was
as a
reported
function
in the
of
last
class.
curriculum committee
So it's
report,
just-
but the course titles weren't
This
actually
is-
on that agenda.
Well, it's like more, we changed more.
I don't think any of them were on the last.
We
agenda.
did the studies, you know, the academic support in the middle school, but we were doing now all of the required courses in the high school.
High school, right.
Right.
But these don't look like special ed.
But they are, they are.
That's the point.
They are.
They're not supposed to,
But is that the point?
yes,
transcript this
you don't
way,
want
so
them
that
to
you-
identify the student by the name of the
Right,
course on the
Chemistry
transcript.
is college prep chemistry.
Right, but if they're in a
So
class
only
But you
special
guys
section,
know
they
what
would,
class
it
it
will
is.
still show
It's
them as
another
their
It was
transcript.
before it
Yeah.
They would identify.
There's a class status.
You can't have a different grading system.
Robin, do you want me to-
So, of course,
No, I think he's.
So it's really complying better with
The
that.
class isn't changing, just what it was
Yeah.
on the transcript
But,
is changing.
but those getting the transcript won't be able to tell the difference between college prep and college prep.
That's true.
Okay,
That's the law.
maybe the law, but it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, we're on to the advocacy committee, which has,
We
oh,
have
we didn't have a roll call. We, yeah, we do.
First and second. Well,
Okay, we need a roll call.
That's right. So, Mr. Byrne,
I'm gonna vote no.
Ms. Schaefer,
Yes.
Mrs. Gray, Mr. Savage,
Yes.
Mrs. White,
Yes.
Mrs. Corr,
Yes.
Mrs. Walter.
Yes.
Mrs. McHugh.
Yes.
Madam Chair.
We're up to the advocacy committee, which hasn't met since school got out, so we're report there. The SEL committee,
So, the minutes are ready, but they didn't go out, but there's one item that's timely that I'm just, Mrs. Richmond's not here tonight, so I'm just gonna read this really quickly. And it's just basically an update on the new freshman orientation. Students, or families, I guess, were, received a flyer inviting them to come to the, newly revamped freshman student orientation. There will be about 440 students in this incoming freshman class. Freshman orientation will be held on August 28th, 8:30 to 1:15. The entire freshman class is invited to come together. They'll have the opportunity to walk their schedule, meet their counselor and some of the freshman teachers, and participate in interactive sessions and intention design to get ready for the high school experience. I don't want to read all of it, it's too much. They'll be welcome, they'll actually receive a schedule, they'll be, the rotation of the day, the 3 breakout sessions will be explained to them. There'll be one on technology, there'll be one on SEL and character education, and then a third one entitled Tips to Succeed at Ridge High School. There'll be actual time for the students to walk the building with their schedule. Peer leaders will be kind of hosting the students and will serve in various roles throughout the building during the course of the time that students are there. So far, at the time of the meeting, 310 of the 440 incoming students responded that they would be coming, and only 18 said they could not attend. The presumption is, in the absence of an RSVP, that you expect them, and it's okay either way. And they will receive lunch at the end so that they can all be together. The staff and the administration are really excited to see how this new program works, and it sounds like it's going to be great. So the rest of the SEL report will come next week. I mean, next month. Sorry, no, next week.
They worked really hard on that,
No one's
too.
coming after that.
Like, they worked really hard on it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a lot of thought.
Yeah, Mr. Krause is gone, but.
Yeah,
they did.
okay, can we just clap for that?
Just a
It's on
really nice
tape,
program.
they'll see it.
They're really excited about it too.
It's just the fact that they're actually gonna get to walk with their schedules.
Yeah.
As opposed to, it's just a tour, which Well, that's all well and good, but I still know where my classes are, so it should really help some of that.
And for members of the public who don't know what it used to be like, it was half the time that this is proposed and half the class alphabetically was split, morning and afternoon, so you didn't intermix with your entire grade, and it was more of a get 'em in, get 'em out kind of thing. So they're
lunch,
gonna
this
have
is
a little,
lunch.
there'll be
That's
more
gonna
time and
solidify
opportunity.
Yeah, it's kind of like a, you know, you want the schools, you'll get like the class.
Class of 2023.
Yeah.
Excited about their identity.
I don't think there's any liaison reports. Okay, so we're up to public comment on non-agenda items, if anyone has.
I mean, I have a question. Elaine Daddario, 46. November, there's an election, and I'm wondering if anybody has come out for the board seat that may be open? Do we have names?
There's a petition that will be filed.
What's a
The
petition?
petition's what you have, like I have mine right here because I'm up for reelection.
Oh,
but
you're,
there's
so you're coming back?
a petition for an additional, a new candidate.
It's not till Monday, but yeah,
Yeah.
from what
So
I
that's
understand,
Monday.
there's two existing board members and another person that are planning on filing, that's what we understand as of today.
Wait,
It's due next Monday.
so you're up, so you're coming back?
And so is Mrs. Schaefer.
You're not coming back, but are there enough people?
Yes, there's someone else who has
Okay.
indicated that they're filing.
That's my
There's
question.
only 3 people.
Now we have people to fill all
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Good question.
Okay, any other comments? Any other public comments?
Okay,
Okay, we're up to board forum, and we have listed on here the board self-evaluation, and again, like last time, it's kind of late in the evening when we got to this. So there's, okay, yeah, we still have to do an executive session, so what I would suggest, this, just for the public, the board filled out this school board's form where we kind of evaluate ourselves on what kind of job we're doing, and we all have the results of it to read over, which everyone has seen. I think we're gonna put it off, hopefully we'll have an earlier meeting to talk about it, but we also should talk about our committees and how they're working, because several board members have brought different concerns, so we can talk about the board self-evaluation results and our, and how we think the board is functioning and stuff like that. Hopefully at our next meeting, which hopefully won't be so late at night, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so now, we're up to adjournment.
No,
Well, no, we have to go into, we don't adjourn, we get.
Right, now we go into motion to executive
Okay, so
session.
motion to go back into executive session.
For student matters, it's for student related matters.
And this is great, it was Ms. Schaefer.
Yeah. You were
Seconded the motion to go into executive session.
So, were you second? Thank you. Kristen? We have to.
Right now?